What is the best loophole that you've ever found? Story 1. I didn't find this loophole, but my friend did. A few years back, an online store had this promotion where whoever spent the most money over a month would get free round-trip airline tickets to anywhere in the world. My friend, who's a freaking genius, found that one thing you could buy on the site was a gift certificate, so he bought a $25 gift certificate and kept spending it on another $25 gift certificate. So he ended up spending $25 on round-trip tickets to Australia. Story 2, I used to work at Papa John's to pay my way through college. There was a contest we had where if you got someone to upsize their pizza from like a medium to a large for an extra $2, you got points towards movie tickets. A large was simply $2 extra normally anyways. Anyone that ordered a large, I simply put in a medium and upsized it. I won every freaking week. My coworkers didn't notice this obvious loophole, and it didn't cost the customer extra, so I didn't have a problem with this morally gray area. Free movie tickets every week was huge in college. Story 3. My brother got free parking for pretty much his entire time at university. It was that golden period when the pay parking kiosks were able to accept credit cards, but before they were actually connected. They'd read a card and check it against a locally stored list of banned numbers, and once a month, the meter maid would download the transactions, process them, and update the blacklist. My brother found that they'd accept those prepaid gift cards if they were backed by Visa or MasterCard, but couldn't check the available balance, so he'd buy one, use the balance up on whatever, then use the card for parking until the end of the month when it'd get processed, found to not have funds, and banned. Rinse and repeat. Guy saved probably $2,500 over his degree. Story 4. When I was in high school, I applied for a summer job with the county. As part of the unbiased application process, each applicant was asked to take an intelligence test. The test consisted of about 80 questions. Each question was 4 or 5 line drawings, and you had to put an X in the box next to the one that didn't belong. Pretty easy. I happened to notice, though, that the test paper was 2 parts, which is 2 sheets of paper that are attached together back to back with a sheet of carbon paper in between. I could peel the sheets apart and look inside. The second sheet just had a bunch of boxes printed on it, and I could see from the first few questions that I'd answered that the X I'd marked ended up in the printed boxes on the second sheet thanks to the carbon paper. So I did all of the questions with obvious answers, and if I was unsure, I just peeled the paper apart, noted where the box was printed on the second sheet, and made sure I got it right. Of course, I got 100%. I figure that if you can cheat on an intelligence test, you're pretty smart. Story 5. My dad figured out a good one back in the 80s. Just like they do now, back then cable companies would give you a free weekend trial of a premium channel, HBO, Max, etc., in an effort to get more people to sign up for those channels and pay more. However, our cable company's method of giving you access to the special channel was to send a signal to your cable box, which unlocked the channel. To turn off the channel at the end of the free trial, another signal was sent. My dad figured out that the signal to lock it was only sent for a short period of time, so before the end of the free weekend, he would unplug the cable box and then plug it back up the next day. Since the box never got the signal, we would have a free premium channel for a while. Usually after a month or 2, it would get shut off, so we'd have to wait for the next free trial weekend. Story 6. An agreement I had with an employer on school reimbursement with additional pay. I had to agree to remain at the company until X date, and they would pay for my schooling plus additional pay for various things. If I left, I would have to pay the money back. The parent company of my division changed after the agreement was signed, and time came for me to get the cash owed to me. Head of HR refused to pay. I went to him and asked why I wasn't getting the check we agreed to. He stated that the agreement was with the previous parent company and therefore was no longer valid. He had this smug look on his face, but then he noticed I had a big smile on my face. I could tell he couldn't figure out why. I asked him again if they were refusing to pay, and he said yes. I then stated that I no longer have anything binding me here because the contract stated if I willingly leave the company, I have to repay the money. He agreed and asked what my point was. I then stated that if the parent company did change, then I did leave said company, but I did not willingly leave. Therefore, I did not owe any money if I left this company, as it was not the company I signed the agreement with. The expression on his face changed. I continued on with, if I, hypothetically, put my 2 weeks notice in now, I would be able to leave without owing any money. It didn't take him long. He realized by stating that the agreement was no longer valid because the company changed that he gave me the information I needed to get out of the contract. He agreed to pay me the money. Spoiler alert, he was fired a few weeks later for various reasons. He was one of the worst HR directors I have ever seen. Story 7. This was something of a literal loophole which my friends and I exploited at Dave & Buster's. For those of you who may not be familiar with the establishment, Dave & Buster's is sort of a restaurant, sports bar, and arcade all rolled into one. There are dozens of allegedly skill-based games from which you can win tickets, and then you can use those tickets to buy cheap prizes that you don't actually want and won't actually use. That is, of course, unless you buy a whole bunch of those sticky hand things. Those things are awesome. Anyway, on the night in question, my friends and I discovered a game in which you were supposed to hit a button at just the right time to make a ball drop into a numbered ring. It was designed to be insanely difficult, and in fact it might have been impossible, had it not been for the hand-sized hole in one side of the machine. We took turns playing the game, which involved acting like we were trying to time our button presses, then catching the ball as it fell and quickly depositing it into the highest scoring ring. We managed to rack up several hundred tickets in this way, but our best discovery came when we were ready to turn those tickets in. It used to be that when you exchanged tickets for prizes, arcades would run them through a counting machine. At Dave & Buster's, or at least at the one that we visited, they used a scale to determine how many tickets a customer had accumulated. This scale happened to be positioned in such a way that if one were to lean on the counter at just the right angle, they'd be able to push down on it during the weighing process. By the end of the outing, my friends and I had actually managed to buy a $20 piece of schlock for the low price of only $20. And at one of those arcades, that's definitely a victory. If I recall correctly, we left that night with a vaguely futuristic-looking alarm clock. That was only because they were out of those sticky hand things, though. Story 8. In the summer of 2009, a new water park, Aquatica, opened up in Florida. My cousin and I went nearly every single day, from open to close, for 2 months. It's my favorite out of all the water parks I've visited, with many awesome rides and attractions. But for the purposes of this question, we'll be focusing on just one ride and a couple other things: the river and some of their restaurants. See, the park had lockers where people could store their stuff, small and large lockers. Smalls were $5, large were $10, but if you brought the key for the large lockers back, you'd get back $5. There were also 3 restaurants in the park. One was a buffet, one had great chicken tenders and fries, and another had awesome burgers. Luckily for my cousin and I, there was a pass you could get that let you eat unlimited at all 3 restaurants for the entire day. Now, the keys did come with a wrist strap, so you could always have your key on you and not lose it, but most people would stick the key in their pockets and go into the river, not realizing that it wasn't the typical lazy river and, in fact, had some pretty powerful jets under the water to keep things moving. Even full-grown men can have trouble standing in the middle of the river due to how fast it was going. Well, my cousin and I figured out within the first couple of days that people were just losing their keys and loose change all over that river. We could have done the responsible thing, which was to turn in the lost keys and pocket the change, but we were teenagers and assholes. So what we did instead was turn in the keys, yes, but as if it was our own key, and we'd pocket the $5. We would alternate who would turn in a key, as well as time it so that each time we did turn in a key, it was with someone brand new, further lowering the chances of getting caught. We'd turn in an average of about 10 keys every single day. We'd then use that money, plus whatever change we'd gathered, to buy the eating pass and pig out. Add into that the fact that my dad was actually giving us money so we could buy the food pass, and we were turning quite a bit of profit that summer. He spent his money on hair stuff, and I spent mine on video games. Story 9, I had a lawyer friend who leased a car from a dealer that had a really poorly written contract. Depending on how a car lease is written, and maybe depending on what state you're in, the dealer either continues to hold title to the car while it's leased to you, with the contract giving you right of possession, or you hold title to the car while the dealership has a lien on the title, so that ownership returns to the dealer at the end of the lease. This contract gave the dealer the lien rather than the title, but the way it was written, the entire contract expired at the end of the lease term, including the provision that returned the title to the dealer. So essentially, the contract disappears, my friend is left with both the car and the title to the car, the dealer has no legal rights to the car, the dealership called her and asked when she would be returning the car. She said, "I'm not." They said, "Oh, you're buying the car?" She says, "No, I'm just going to keep it, thanks." The dealer sued her, then once they looked closer, they realized they messed up the contract and offered to settle. Since she wasn't completely confident that a judge wouldn't just find a way to justify giving the car back to the dealer, she settled, but the settlement ended up being her buying the car for like 20% of its value. Story 10, I've shared this before, but it's my best. To set the scene, it's 1999 in suburban Utah, and we're partying, well, like it's 1999. Weekends are constant backyard barbecues between a couple of my best friends who have adjoining backyards. Over time, the invite list keeps growing, and as we're between high school and starting college, we're all broke. We began by covering most of the food, and people would bring their own drinks, chips, whatever. But with the growing list of guests, we're starting to get a little short on covering the hosting costs. Cue a late Thursday night as we head to the local Albertsons to see if we can find some meat and other things on sale in preparation for Friday night. We're digging through the butcher section and we find a few things on sale. Head up to checkout and it's around midnight. The attendant is scanning out items, and as he grabs one of the packages of meat, he stops and says, "Oh, this is expired. I'll get you a new one and not charge you for it." We question him and he replies that they have a freshness guarantee, that anything expired is replaced with a new item and is free. We tell him it's no big deal to replace it since it has just expired by a day. We get a free pack of steaks and are stoked. The next night at the barbecue, we're discussing the luck we had, and one of my friends says, "I've been thinking about this all day. They've got to have a bunch of expired stuff on those shelves. And if we find it, won't it all be free?" We all think about it and agree that he might have a good idea here. So the next Thursday night, we show up at the grocery store at 11:30 p.m. and start the hunt. Now, not only are we grabbing anything we can find that's expired, but anything that's going to expire that day after midnight. Dozens of packages of meat, salads, day-old bread, random expensive cheeses, absolutely anything we can find. It's around 1 a.m. when we roll up to the checkout with 4 shopping carts full of food. The loan checker sighs at having this much work and begins to scan. As it beeps on our first item, my buddy who hatched the plan says, "Oh, that's expired, so it should be free." Checker gives him a look, checks the expiration date, gives a whatever shrug, and discounts the item for free. He moves on to the next one, and as soon as it beeps, my buddy says again, "That's free too." The kid looks up, and with a completely straight face, my friend says, "It's all free." The look on his face is pure panic as he grabs the phone and over the intercom calls the night manager to the front. A mid-40s guy shows up, already looking bothered that he got called out from the nap in his office to deal with something. The checker tells him that we're claiming everything in the carts is expired and should be free. The manager starts grabbing things out of the first cart and checking the expiration dates. His face is getting redder and redder with each item, and honestly at this point I'm feeling just a little twinge of guilt. After a couple minutes, he looks at all of the carts and yells at us, "This is total abuse of the system!" I'm ready to call it quits, but our ringleader replies, "It's your policy." The manager stares at him for a minute and then loses the standoff. He starts angrily scanning each item, pounding on the keyboard to discount the prices for free and just tossing the food down the belt for the poor checker to bag. I'm super uncomfortable, but my friend who hatched the plan is a soulless ginger. He tells the manager, "Can you please handle our food more carefully? It's for a party." From the look on the manager's face, I thought the guy was going to jump the counter. It takes quite a while to ring up 4 carts worth of stuff, and the total ends up being over $400 of free food. I'm dying, but my buddy is loving every minute of it, even directing the kid begging to put some items in plastic versus paper, what should go on top because it's fragile, etc. The manager yanks the receipt off the register, throws it at my friend, and storms off back to the office. We pack up and head out. We throw a bomb barbecue the next night and have enough meat to freeze and use the next weekend. We decided to give it a week to cool off, so 2 weeks later, we head back on a Thursday night. But by now, Albertsons Quality Control Group has been on it though, and we find maybe a handful of items that have expired. Not easily deterred, my friend suggests we head to the next suburb over. 15 minutes later, we're back to filling up shopping carts full of loot again. The same scenario plays out, but this manager has more of a "not my problem" attitude and just sends us on our way. Weekend number 3 rolls around and we go to scope things out. As we start browsing, another friend says, "Hey, where are all the freshness guarantee signs?" We don't see any, so our ringleader heads to the front and asks the checker. It's gone. Our plan lasted less than a month. We had stockpiled enough food to last the last 2 months of summer and threw some great parties. I can't say for certain that we single-handedly broke their policy, but we like to think so.